Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. So from this angle, you can see my cat. This is Meerkat. She's taking a nap. She has stolen my chair, as she is wont to do. She'll hop up in my lap, and then as soon as I get up, she will steal my chair. So I guess I'm recording from a dining room chair today because, yeah, taking a nap. Can't disturb a sleeping kitty. I want to talk a little bit about the case study because it is different than what I had originally planned due to the COVID outbreak. The main concept now is exploring how the analysis and how the economic benefits differ once you use higher resolution data. Now, instead of using annual averages for energy consumption and solar irradiation, we're going to look on an hourly basis and see how that affects things. The other thing that I've done for this case study, given the fact that a lot of you are in totally different parts of the world, is to try and make it a little bit easier to parcel out different pieces of the analysis. So there's a couple of main steps that I would suggest maybe you can break things up, where one person would be in charge of calculating the daily electricity demand as a function of temperature. One of you would then program in the hourly demand, how it varies throughout the day. Maybe one person would be in charge of pulling all of the solar data for each location and manipulating it so that you have it in terms of hourly production scaled to the size of whatever system is needed in each location. Another person could do the battery storage calculations, and then someone else could be in charge of the economic analysis, aggregating everything up to the monthly level where the utility is going to either bill you or pay you for your energy and calculate all of the net present value as a result. So you don't have to do it that way. You can split it up however you want, but what I would caution you about is if one person is in charge of something, don't just let them do it and plug it in without having someone else in the group check it. Because this assignment, by virtue of being a group assignment, is supposed to be a little bit harder than something that you do individually. So that also means you shouldn't just do individual parts and piece them together. It's designed to be a little bit more challenging, have something where you want to put your brains together in order to figure it out. So if you split it up, just have the one person taking the lead on one piece, but make sure that at least one other person, preferably two, is also helping out, bouncing ideas off of each other, checking your work to see, does this make sense once you've implemented it, and so on. The other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that there are still some simplifying assumptions baked into the assignment, and I just want to give a little bit more detail about some of those. Because the model that you're going to end up with after this phase is pretty realistic from a data perspective, and the economic analysis is going to be really solid, you still could potentially use it if you're buying a house someday and want to know about whether or not it makes sense to put solar panels on it. So I just thought I would tell you what is still being simplified in this case so that in the future, maybe if you want to use this model, then you'll know how to adapt it and make it even better. All right. So one aspect of the assignment that is still simplified is the fact that a lot of utilities don't keep the electricity price the same throughout the whole day, and certainly not throughout the whole year. So we are using a uniform cost of electricity for an entire year, at which point it goes up by 2.2%. But what happens in reality is that oftentimes energy is more expensive in the winter when it's cold and there's more demand for heating. It's also higher demand in the middle of summer when it's really hot. Basically, the rate tracks demand somewhat. In some states, they use what's called time of use monitoring or time of use rates, which effectively can also change the electricity rate throughout the day so that the electricity is more expensive in the early evening once people get home, for example, and now they have to incentivize homeowners to use less electricity in those periods of high demand. So California does this, some other states are starting to get on board with it, and it incentivizes you to do things like running your dishwasher or your laundry overnight when there's not much demand and when electricity is therefore cheaper. So the goal for the utility is to try and smooth out that curve that's in the appendix of the assignment so that electricity demand is a little bit more uniform throughout the day. The other thing that's simplified is also related, and that is the concept of what's called net metering. If a state uses net metering, that says utilities that operate in that state, when electricity is sold back onto the grid, they have to give you credit for the full price of that electricity, not the 40% that the updated assignment tells you to use. The reason these two are related, and the reason for making an update to the assignment, is that you need one or the other in order for the battery storage system to make sense. You either have to have a discount when you're selling the electricity back to the grid, like the 40% that's in the updated assignment, or you have to have an electricity rate that varies throughout the day and throughout the year. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense to add battery capacity, because if you're getting the full value for credit when you sell back to the grid, then there's no reason to store it in the battery unless the price of electricity is varying throughout the day. If that's the case, then it makes sense because you're going to be producing more energy from the solar panels during the middle of the day when there's less demand, and then storing it in the battery so that you can use it early in the evening when the electricity rate would be the highest. For the adjusted assignment, I decided just to go with that 40% discount, or it's like a wholesale rate, or it's actually called an avoided cost rate. I went with that just because it's simpler, but time of use monitoring and time of use rates are becoming more common as a way of trying to smooth out the curve. So in future, you may see that used instead of an avoided cost rate. So that's how I've made the assignment a little bit simpler. Please fill out the group dynamics survey this week. That's due on Friday, so that we can understand how your group is planning on tackling the remote work environment and still collaborating successfully. And if you have any questions that need to be clarified about the assignment, make sure that you put that in your response as well. All right, thanks so much. Have a great day. Say goodbye, Meerkat. She's still asleep.